Hi all, today I'd like to guide you through the procedural placement tools in the Giants editor for FS25. First off, we'll create a new map. I'll start from a blank template from Farmer Bob's. You can find it online. Once we have our new location, we'll make a bookmark. So we can find it later on. Okay, there we go. So we have our new folder. We have a configuration folder with our default configuration XML files. We have a data folder with our texture layers. We have an unprocessed height map, and we have a masks layer with a lot of masks that we're not going to use. We have our map itself. We have some preview icons to show the map in game, and we have an overlay map that will be shown once we're in game. Let's open up our map in the Giants editor. Once we are loaded, we want to do some cleanup. I think there's a mistake in the flat map. Where some objects are duplicated. The locations until the railroads also exist in the map. So those are duplicates. We're going to remove them. And we can already save our map. First time saving it will take a little while. I've noticed procedural placement works better once you have saved once. It's a good idea to save it on startup, so everything is initialized. Okay, once that's ready, we can go look at procedural placement. We see we already have a lot of pre-configured masks here. Depending on which map you start from, there might be more or less. We're going to remove all of them for now, because we want to start out with a clean slate. Apply our changes. Distance masks are already empty, objects also, and we don't have any rules yet. Okay, we don't have a height mask selected for now, that's fine. We do have a block mask, but we're going to generate another one in a second. When you go back to our folders, when we go to data and masks, we can see there are already a lot of masks, but we're not going to use them, so we can remove them all. We'll only keep the block mask, but we'll generate a new one, because if I'm not mistaken, we can take a look at the block mask. When we go to procedural placement layer paint, we can see there are already some strange things on the block masks, and we don't really want that. So we want to clean it up. What we can do is say clear, and it's going to remove it and crash procedural placement. When we reopen it, it's going to ask for a new location of our block mask file. We're going to go to our masks folder, call it something else than block mask 2, and save it. Okay, now it's looking at our new block mask. We should also see our file over here, and we can remove the old one. We can click apply, and when we look in the editor, going to open and close this to regenerate the mask. And when I go look at block mask, I don't see anything because nothing is actually blocked. Okay, let's create our first mask. Let's go for a forest mask. It expects a file name, but we don't have any masks yet, so we'll just call it forest for now. 248 is our map size. Now it has a reference to the mask. When we click apply, it actually generates it, and it will show us our resolution. Okay, when we zoom in on our map, in the masks layer, we now have the option to select our newly created forest mask. We're going to save our editor. When we go to the mask folder, we see we have a newly generated mask called forest.png, which is just a blank image. Now we can actually draw. I'll make this a little bit bigger. We can actually draw on this terrain by using a left mouse click, and now we have created our first forest mask. If we go to the block mask, it should disappear, so it's only rendered on a forest mask. When we go back to our files, we don't see any changes. When we save in the editor, it should have updated our masks, and now we see our new layer. Let's do something with the layer. Go to procedural placement. We have the layer referenced here. That's important. When you go back to rules, let's add our first rule. T, because we're just going to texture. You can also use F for foliage or for objects. It doesn't really matter how you name it, but it helps to follow the convention. We're going to texture the forest layer. First up, select our script. We're going to use scatter in mask. Usually when we just want to fill a complete mask with something, you use scatter in mask. We need to select the mask to fill. We're going to select our forest mask. And we need to add something to fill it with, so we're going to add an object. When we select something in drop down, we see all our texture layers. These are the direct textures, these are the combined layers. For now we're creating a forest. Let's pick forest grass and click apply. We create our first rule, and that is fill the forest mask with the forest texture. We can press place objects, and the editor should now texture this area. When we leave procedural and generation, we can see the editor has textured this. We see a strange height border. Don't worry about this. It's only visible in the editor once you load it in game, or you reload the game, reload the map in the editor. It will disappear, but it pops up while generating constantly, so try to ignore it. We create our texture of the forest, perfect. Let's add some more variation to it, because right now it already is a combined layer, so it has some variation, but I'd like to add some extra details. First way to do that is we can add another texture over here. And let's say sometimes we also want some dirt, gravel speckled in our texture. We can add this. Now let's say probability. I want most of it to be the forest ground, but every 5 in 50 spots we're going to generate another texture. We can run place objects again, and now we see we have created some spots with another texture. Now all the spots are random, and to create a nicer fill layer or a detail layer, we would like them to group together. So we can group them together, but we need to create a new layer instead of adding layers over here. We can remove this object again, press apply, and create a new rule. We'll go for our forest again, we'll call it detail. First up, as usual, select our script. Instead of scattering in mask, now we can choose scatter in Perlin noise. It will create a noise mask on top of the forest layer. If we select our forest layer and only fill in those spots, that is if we clamp it. Normally the noise is generated between 0 and 255. When we set a clamp, we can say we only want to use the noise that is bigger than 100. When you use the built-in drag and drop, it gives you crazy ranges. The only thing that makes sense for clamp threshold is something between 0 and 255. So it doesn't even give a correct example. We can debug this later using the debug masks tool to actually see what this is doing. For seed, it doesn't really matter. 0 is also seed, but I'm going to select something random. Frequency, if I'm not mistaken, this is something between 0 and 1. I'll pick something halfway. And press apply. So now our rule is saved. We have a forest rule, we have a forest detail rule. forest is going to fill everything with probability 50 with grass, and we have another texture layer on top of that with no objects, so we'll add something. This was the gravel layer. Let's pick the dirt gravel. Probability doesn't matter because there's only one object. It's not saving my selection. We'll try this again. Nope, it's not doing it. Apply, reset, so it reinitializes the values. See if that has helped. Nope, still nothing. We'll apply these changes and we have a crash. Okay, we'll just open our map again and see until where we saved. I have no idea why we ran into this. But there was something wrong because it wasn't taking my inputs. We don't have any rules. Oh, that sucks. The forest. We're going to scatter in mask. We're going to scatter in our forest mask. We'll re-add our object of the grass. The forest grass that we were adding. Apply that. Add another rule for our forest detail. We'll pick our Perlin noise. We'll go for forest mask. We'll have a seed. We'll have the frequency. We're going to clamp it. 100. That's it. Apply. We'll check our mask. Forest mask still looks fine. Okay, let's run our generation. Finished, and our texture is back, but now are those dirt spots or not? We're going to use something more obvious because I don't think we're seeing anything. This is using the scattering Perlin noise. We can go take a look at the script. When the script is running, it will generate a debug mask called dm scatter Perlin. That means to see what this texture is filling in, we can enter debug masks. It will regenerate all the rules, and it will give us a drop down. If we open any information view over here, and then select one of the debug masks, it takes a while to render, but it should show the spots that it is trying to generate stuff into. Our mask is perfectly fine, but I see we don't edit an object. So let's add our gravel again. Now it's taking the input, so everything seems fine. Press apply, we can place our objects. Wait for a second. We can also clear our debug masks. We can remove this, and now we see we filled in the textures. But we have more glued together groups of texture being made. If we use this clamp value, for example, if we lower it, we should see more. The spots should get bigger. If we make it bigger, always press apply after making changes, or your changes won't have any effect. Okay, so our spots are getting smaller. That means if we go to 200, our spots should get bigger. And they're so big, almost nothing is visible anymore. We'll pick something in between. Now we have nice big spots and a natural looking fill in the terrain with two rules. Okay, next up, let's add some ground foliage to this. So first off, in objects, we have foliage. The textures don't use, I haven't seen a working example of the textures yet. Foliage, we'll use deco foliage. Why not? And we'll select some of the stuff here. I have no idea what room exists, but we'll see in a minute. And add some grass. Nice. We might use that for something else. Some more wild grasses. When we click apply, these references are added. Once they are added, we're going to add a new rule. Now we're going to place foliage in our forest. Again, we're going to use the scattering mask type. We're going to select our forest mask, and we're going to add our objects at the bottom. Now, below the textures, you should see your newly created objects. We can add them all three. Or maybe just do these ones. And we want way much more of that than the other one. Apply, place objects. And now it should generate the foliage all across my layer mask. Instead of doing the whole layer, let's also pick the scatter in Berlin noise. If we use the same mask and if we use the same seed as the other one, we should be painting the same spots. I haven't tried this before, otherwise wondering if this will work. And it did. Because it's using the same seed, it's also filling in the same details. Okay, now we're adding foliage, and we see we have much more of the one grass than the other grass scattered in. Perfect, but we're creating a forest. We also need some trees. So that's our third type. Over here, add some trees. You can find them in the Farming Simulator game directory. Add maps, trees, and we can pick our style. I'll take the oak ones. Each number is a different growth stage. I don't necessarily need all of them, but I'd like to have some variation. Let's give them names. Click apply. We can add another rule for our forest, and generally everywhere we're going to scatter in our mask, our forest mask, some objects. We're mostly going to add the big trees and some smaller ones. And if we say we want a lot more of these trees against those ones, we'll have some variation. Scattering mask, forest mask, my objects. This looks fine. We'll click apply and we'll place our objects. And we have generated something. We've generated a lot of trees, like really a lot of trees. So we can say object minimum distance, generate a tree every 5 units. Click apply, regenerate. Now we have our forest area. It's still a lot. Okay, we have some ground foliage, we have some different textures, variations, we have some trees we can generate. All the foliage are your map foliage layers, so you can add anything you want. Same for the i3D objects, you don't even have to use trees, you can generate, for example, houses or any object you can import. So far for adding textures, objects, also I was adding multiple objects. You can also only add one, doesn't matter. There's a system with child and parent rules. I haven't experimented a lot with it, but I think you can find an example in the Asian map when you open the i3D file in a text editor. And we look for our rules. We can actually see what they are doing. First off, they are generating masks. They have a texture layer for dirt on the PG Meadow mask. Then they add grass on the Meadow UPDT mask. They add a mountain texture, a rock texture on that mask. It's a meadow grass, and over here they had the bushes. I'm looking for the object. Over here we have trees. This is the parent object. This is the only one that is using the child rules. So the parent objects actually have trees themselves, the big ones, and they have a child rule that all points to this C trees various, and this has all the small variations of the same trees. So I think for every big tree that it's spawning, it's going to spawn one of these trees, or depending on the counts, at least 8 or maximum 20 trees near the big one should be one of those. This also is a main rule, the parent one, and the child rules are not main rules. I think that's the only purpose of the main rule attribute, is to create the parent and the child rules, and child rules will never be main rules, and so they will also not be executed when running the rules over here. Rules are also executed in order, means this one will texture before that one. If we move this one down, and we're just going to deselect our foliage layer, so we only do the texturing. We are first generating our detail spots in the texture and then filling the whole mask with our new texture. So we're actually overwriting our first layer that we generated. So order matters, but the order doesn't apply to all the scripts. For example, clear and scatters will, but when you use the generate splines, it's always executed before everything else, and so the splines will always be overwritten with whatever you're doing in the masks later on. We're going to re-enable all our rules, so we have a nice forest back. We still have some problems we would like to fix. And that is the border between our forest and our grass is kind of rough. We want to soften it up. And we're going to soften it up by generating a new border over here. To do that, we're going to make use of the logic in one of those generate scripts. And if I pull one open, this is the example from the Asian map. It is the most, it's the biggest example they supply. And we're going to have a look about how they are generating borders from existing masks. So for now, I'll just copy some of the logic over here, and we're going to create our own version of the generate script. scripts. Guides. Okay, we copied everything. First up, the arguments are going to be the drop-downs you need to select when you use your script within the rules window. So now I've created PB guides. If I add a new rule, and I select my new scripts, I should see I get a couple of arguments I can fill in to add some masks. That's what's, just ignore those. That's what defined over here. So we're only going to have our forest mask, so I can remove the other ones. I also don't care about that stuff. We're going to remove most of this stuff. What we do want is an example of border generation, and we're going to save mask. That's about it. We can remove everything else. We have our forest mask, so our border generation should be of the forest. We're going to fill our complete border from 255 to 255. This means completely white. If we say, for example, 255 to 0, it will fade out the border starting from the forest line, where it will fill in 100%. And if we say, for example, that our border is 4 units wide, it will generate a border and fade out. So the end side of the border will be invisible, and the inside will be filled in completely. So we add our forest mask. For now, we're going to fill in the complete border. We're going to make it 4 units wide. It's a forest mask or forest borders. This is the new mask we create. In this line, we're going to save our mask, and we're going to call it forest borders. Okay, I didn't have much. I don't want the new masks to be saved in the game install pad. I actually want the editor to use my newly created folder, and actually in the masks folder. So I'm going to copy this over and place it over here. I don't need the root. Okay. Windows stuff, I think we need to escape the backslashes. And very importantly, end your path with the slashes, because later on over here we're just adding the strings together. If you don't add the slashes, it will create new images in a data folder called masks with this name added to it at the end. So don't forget the end slashes. Now we have our mask. We create our distance mask, and we're going to save it in that file. Save. We can go back to our rule. We're going to select a different script and reselect the one we created, so the input fields get refreshed. We go to forest mask, select our new mask, and click on apply. So now this is saved. We want to do this before we start filling in anything, so our new masks get generated first. We can press place objects, and if everything worked, we can go back to our folder of masks, and we should see our new generated file that only has the border mask around our forest. This was our forest file. This is the border that we just generated. Now the file is generated, but if you want to use it in the editor, we need to add it as a separate mask. So we can add our forest border mask and select the file we just created. Press apply. And if it reads correctly, it will see the resolution. We can add a new rule for this border. Excuse me. Scattering mask. Now we can select our border. We'll add some texture to it. We're going to fade into grass. So maybe grass patchy can work. press apply, run our generation. Now we've created a textured border, but we've just moved the problem. We didn't really solve it. So that's where the opacity parameter is handy. If we save this, we go back to our rules, we press place objects. It should regenerate it. And when we go look at our mask file, I don't think we're going to be able to see this. Zoom in. Oh, we can. It actually fades out to the end of the border. And it's also what we see on our texture, but oh no, the buggy software did something strange again. It filled everything with concrete. We never even defined textures of concrete. No, but we are fading out the texture on top. There isn't really any base layer, as you might or might not have noticed. Every time we press place objects, a lot of the previous generation gets removed. When we generate objects again, all the old trees will be removed. The same thing is also happening with the textures. Before it's regenerating the new masks to fill it in, it's also going to clear the masks. So right now, our border, it wants to fade out the border, but it has nothing to fade out to. We can prevent that by pre-filling the complete border, not the faded out one, with a base texture. To do that, we also need to have a mask of the complete border. So we can generate it. We're going to rename them as a filled and a faded one. This is going to be the filled border, and we'll save them both. Save our script, go to rules. We don't need to run all the rules again, we only want to regenerate the masks, but I don't want to toggle them all off. Now we have generated, still have our block mask forest, we have our forest border from earlier, but now we have a faded and a filled, and they should show some differences. This one is fading out and this one is filled in. Perfect. We can remove this one, we don't use it anymore. Go back to our editor, to masks, this one has been removed. And we're going to add a new one. And another one for our fills. Press apply, let it load the textures. Go back to our rules, we have our texture forest border, we're going to add a base layer for our filled mask, that is going to be grass. We'll move this up, that we first print the base layer, otherwise would override our fade. Press place objects, we didn't update the border, because it also changed. Because right now it's still trying to fill a mask that doesn't exist. You can actually see it in the output, that there was a mask argument not defined. If you click on this, we see that this is empty. This one should have been the faded mask. Apply. We still have some of the concrete left, so we're doing something wrong. This script wasn't updated to scattering mask, and this also means this parameter is wrong, because this has to be the filled mask still. Press apply, we'll double check that this one is scattering mask and this one is scattering mask. This looks fine, place objects. And now it has created a base layer of grass and faded out the dirt layer we added, and so now we'll have a nice crossfade between the forest fading out into the grass. The same border can also be used to add foliage or anything we did earlier, for example, the forest border. Maybe can we invert the forest border? I would like to have grass on the outside, and when it gets inside the forest, it should stop with the grass because we're going to move to the foliage. Let's create an inside border. Ignore that for now. So we have the full border. I think they were doing some border logic in this example over here. We're going to copy this for now and get back to our script. So they create a new mask that is filled. They have some kind of mask. They subtract another mask. So maybe if we start with our filled border and we create faded inverted. No, do we need it? I don't think we need it. If we just take our filled border and we actually subtract our faded border, we should have the inverted borders. That makes sense, I think. Okay. Inverted border. Let's try this out. We'll read it again. Road masks, it has nothing to do with the road. We're working with a forest mask. We're not using the word mask. Forest inverted borders is the filled one minus the faded one. And we'll save this over here. Perfect. Our forest border rule doesn't work yet. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm disabling you. Just generate my new masks. Okay, that finished. Can go look at mask and we have an inverted border. And once it loads up. Come on. We see it fades going inside. So we have this foliage. We still need to add our newly generated mask over here so we can actually use it. Press apply. Go back to our rules. Select our newly generated border mask, sorry. Press apply, and what do we want to apply over here? We want to add some grass. Perfect. Apply, place object. Okay, and now we have some grass from the outside fading into over there. Maybe let's... okay, I want to fill in the whole map with grass except the forest layer. Maybe we fill in everything. Yeah, sure. Add rule. Scatter in the mask. We don't really have a mask that has everything, so we'll save for now. We'll generate a new mask. Press apply. But we don't want to fill everything. We only want to fill everything except for the forest area. So we're going to go back to our scripts. we're going to ask for our everything mask. We're going to do some logic like this. And we'll call it meadow. We'll start from our everything mask and we'll subtract our forest mask. This is called meadow. This looks fine. Now we just need to make sure that our everything mask actually covers everything. We can go to foliage, everything, and we see nothing is covered. We'll go up over here. That's way too small. We'll make it a lot bigger. Just fill out everything. Okay, that's our everything mask solved. Press save. We have to save in the editor. And now we have our new layer that is covering everything. Perfect, that's the one we're loading. We're removing the forest mask from that. I'll save this. I'll have another quick look. I'd like to clamp the values like this. If you're subtracting or adding masks to each other, it's possible that the values go out of bounds. This just ensures all the values stay between 0 and 255, which are our minimum and maximum values for the masks. So we're actually going to clamp this one and we're going to save it in the same value. That should be it. We can save it. We can regenerate our rules. This one is going to fail over here because it didn't have a mask. I think it was that one. But when we go to our folder, we should see our newly generated mask called meadow, and I don't see it. What is happening? We didn't select an everything mask. So I should have seen an error over here. So it maybe is this one. Clamped mask. Apply. Regenerate it. Okay. Let's go look if it did something. It generated my meadow. And it's covering everything except for my forest. I can go back. We have our grass layer. We can say everything. We don't want everything. We want our meadow also to be included. Go back to our role set. First up, we'll select the scatter in mask. Next up, we'll select our meadow. We're going to say everything is, it was already grass, but we'll add some more because I made a mistake. Actually, we want to add foliage to everything. Again, scatter in mask, our meadow mask, and add our grass object. We'll apply place objects, wait for a couple of seconds while the editor is going crazy. Might have been a good moment to save, or we run the risk of losing our complete rule set. Once you have created the rule set, afterwards you can actually copy it in the i3D file, like I showed earlier with the with this example. So you can back them up. The editor is working really hard and eventually we'll be here. and we see that everything is filled with our grass foliage until our forest borderline. Maybe then we don't need to fill the border in anymore. I guess that's about it. I don't really know what the index masks are for, didn't really use them yet. Distance masks, for example, now we are filling our forest with objects and all the objects should have a distance of 10. When we add distance masks, we can, for example, override when placing or auto-generating objects. If an object collides, or an object should at least stay 5 units away from another object, or same with foliage or texture. I don't see any use to use this with textures, but with foliage it's sometimes used in the examples. But I don't like it for foliage because it means you can't fill in grass, because all the foliage will have some distance from each other. It is useful for trees. You can also add your own distance masks. You would, for example, say tree is big, and then you can say a big tree should at least have 2 units different distance from any other object. But if it's foliage, it can be closer to the tree. We're not going to use them. I don't think they're always taken into account depending on which functions you're using in any of the scripts over here. But that's distance masks, the distance matrices, objects. We talked about this. This is the foliage type, or maybe a very interesting one to show you after we have created our foliage is let's add another layer for fields. We'll create a new file. Default is perfect. We'll add a new object over here, and instead of selecting the foliage, we can select terrain detail and say cultivate it. Press OK. We'll also cultivated soil. We'll add this. We go to our roles. We add a new texture role for fields. Scattering mask. We can say our new fields, and we're going to add the object we just created with cultivated soil. And right now, if I'm going to place a field here, I will probably do it with the field generator later on, but for now we're just going to say fields. We're going to make this a little bit smaller. This is going to be my first fields, nicely curved. Kind of a small field, but perfect for now. That's my new field layer. We can press apply. We're going to scattering mask on our field with cultivated ground. Place objects. Earlier we've noticed right now we're filling in the whole map with grass. Now it's also first going to need to remove all the grass and regenerate it. So we've added a lot of delay on every time we're generating the whole mask. So I'm going to disable the grass for now, so we don't have to wait as long every time we're generating. Coffee break. Okay, we finished generating. Now we have our field, but we have a small problem. It's filled with grass. Okay, so before I disable it, let's show something else. We have a clear foliage rule. We can add clear foliage on fields, and over here we can select the script clear foliage in mask. We can select our fields mask, and this, if we go take a look at the script, clear foliage in mask, just runs this function with the mask you pass in. So it's going to remove all the generated foliage, even if we generated it ourselves before, from whichever mask you're selecting. So we can say apply and place objects. We'll have to wait the long generation, but I just want to show you how to remove it. It's very useful on roads, for example, because this is executed in order. You can first paint in your terrain and afterwards paint your roads on top, and then do clear foliage on all roads to remove the objects. I haven't found a way to clear the objects themselves. If you find anything that works also with the objects like trees, let me know. And we're still waiting. Okay, should be finished. Now it cleared off our foliage, but it also cleared our cultivated soil. So we'll have to run again, but I'm not going to wait for it now. What else can I show you? Those are the most used parts. I think in this example, they're also doing something. They're generating a height mask from what your terrain actually looks like. It gives you a file. They have the examples with them like this. A file that you can also import. I'll show the import functionality. Special about this kind of height map files, I don't know why, but they have to be 1 pixel bigger than your actual terrain. We haven't touched this yet. If we go with the height map, we can just select our unprocessed height map, press apply, and now when we run our generation rules, it will also apply the height map we added. So we can already start generating. And in this example, it will create the Riverbend Springs outline. And I'm curious where our forest is going to end up. What we are seeing in the script is they can actually export the same height map again in your code. It's useful because they do some processing on it to calculate the slopes. And that way they can only fill in rocks. But you can find the examples in the map AS. Okay, we finished loading. Almost. We have our acres with our cleared grass, but we also loaded the contours from our height map. Every time you're regenerating now with place objects, it will every time regenerate the height, even if you make changes manually right now. You will start getting issues if this loads up. For example, if I make this a lot bigger, when I exit this window, my old terrain just loads back again. That's because the old height map is still selected here. Once you have generated your terrain, you should clear it here, and it tells you it's going to disable the automatic height manipulation methods. You can clear it, you press apply, and now I can edit my terrain again. And it will actually stay that way. If I ever want to really load my height map, it will override these changes. That's why we'll try it. Why not? We go to our newly generated script. This apparently generates the height mask. We're also going to save it. Maybe let's see what we can do with the height map. They're generating a slope mask and they're generating a threshold on this. Why not? I love those experiments where you can see they were doing other things. We generate the slope mask, then we create the threshold, so we remove part of the mask that is lower than the slope angle for 40. I don't know, those are already quite steep hills. Let's say 20. And we want to save the slope mask. We don't care about the inside. That's just a distant mask. We've seen that before. They use a distant mask with a negative number. So it would make a border of, for example, -2. That means the border is going to go inside instead of outside. Like, for example, earlier with our forest. If you can find our forest. Our border spans this width, I think. I'm not sure. Is it the border or is my border gone? Because I was also filling it in with grass. Right now the border is on the outside. If you use a negative value, the border will be generated on the inside in the actual forest itself. So we're going to generate the slope mask and the height mask, and we're going to save them both. This looks perfect, and we'll see what this gives. For now, I've told you I was going to disable this rule. It still needs to clean up once, but it won't take that long anymore. Once you create big rule sets, it tends to take a very long while. Also, scattering steps don't take that long, or at least for textures they don't. Okay, we've generated our file again. We still see the border. Now I see the border. But we don't need to look in the editor, we need to look in our mask folder. We generate the height mask, since we still have the, we preloaded the riverbend mask, so it exported the riverbank with our changes applied. And it generated the slope masks. These are very interesting. For example, you know, to cut out, if you have our forest mask from earlier, if it should overlap, for example, we can cut out the parts where the slope is too steep to place trees from our forest mask. Those are the most scripts. You have clears, you have generates for the masks, erosion. I haven't used erosion yet. You have some paint by spline tools. I'll show you something about that. So right now we created our forest. Let's say we want to create a path that goes right through the forest. We can say create a spline, place it over here, not turn the spline. Okay, going to move our spline over here. And it's going to run right through our forest, and that's going to be our path. We're going to create an empty transform group, call it dirt paths. Okay. We can say we generate another rule called generate dirt paths. We're looking for the paint terrain by spline. Yeah, scripts, if we go look at the paint terrain by splines, normally it has a lot more code. but you don't need most of it. This is the most important part. Actually, the paint table is also used, and you don't need all the arguments. I'm just going to paint one road, and that's a dirt path. Over here, we're going to say for every dirt path, we're going to use this material, and we're going to paint it in this layer. No, it doesn't make sense that this is a layer. We're going to paint this layer 0, so for example texture 0 in my case is asphalt. We're going to paint asphalt with 2 meters width. That's our dirt path. We don't want asphalt. 0. Nine. Let's make it a gravel path. Let's change that to 9. Press save. Okay. Now we have our paint terrain by splines. We'll reload it because we updated the script. Terrain by splines. We select our grouped object, click add selected, apply. We're going to remove everything. I'm not interested in generating everything. I want to make sure my rule at the bottom is a main rule, and clicked. Then you can run it, and you see there was a hidden state, and now the editor is getting glitchy. Doesn't matter that much. I'll save it. Wait for my file to save, open it up again. This didn't help. Close. Best way, usually restart the editor, but for now it's not necessary. Okay. We're going to disable everything again, and we're going to click on this one, activate this one, and press place objects. Okay, it's finished. Now it printed the new terrain at my spline, but we might want to remove it from the forest. Because now we're painting on top of each other. So we'll need to create a new road mask based on this paint and remove it from the other one. Now, we added the generate dirt paths with the paint terrain by spline. Paint terrain by spline behaves strangely as it's executed before all other stuff is executed. So even if I add it at the bottom, but I do generate all the other stuff, it will override my textures, and I'll show you that, but we'll have to wait. So the idea is we just paint on one layer, then we can export the texture layer and re-import it as a mask, and so we will have generated a road mask just by painting it with the splines. We want that road mask because we can use it to remove it from our forest mask, for example. Okay, we're finished. Now we can see even the rest of our path has been filled with the grass texture, because that's what we've defined, so we don't want that. That's why the paint by spline is annoying. That's why we're going to re-import the texture as a mask. To do that, we'll only activate our generate, and maybe we'll also... Do we have a clear? We don't have a clear all. We'll use this one. When we say clear all in the everything mask we added earlier, we'll have a quick look at what clear all does. It will fill the mask with the texture grass, it will remove all foliage, and it will remove all objects. Okay, so what I asked earlier about the object, this is actually it, remove all objects. I just didn't notice it before. Okay, we're going to do the clear before we're doing the generate paths, but it's not going to matter because generate dirt paths is always executed first. We run this and we have nothing. the inner state of when rules are active or not. Sometimes just doesn't work. It's running again, but I'm curious if it's running the other rules or just a clear all. Clear all also isn't a cheap operation to run. It takes a while. I kinda think it's doing everything. Oh no, it was just a clear. Perfect. So now we can disable our clear and only run our generate third paths. Aha, I'm just clicking the wrong things. We don't need this, we need this. Apply, place objects. Shouldn't take too long. Cool. Messed up spline. Now we have our roadmap. If we go back to our folders, instead of masks, we go one higher. We should actually find our gravel layer somewhere. I don't see it, because we still need to save in the editor. Once we save, all the textures will be refreshed. And there should be something with gravel, with our roads in them, but I don't see it. We're using we're also using a combined layer. Maybe that's working against us. Let's go back to this one. We're looking at our paint by spline, not the mask generation. Go to 0 and we'll see what it gives. Okay, that should have changed texture. Perfect. Save everything, make sure it's saved. Go back to our texture folder. Now we should have something with the concrete where our lines show up, but I don't see it. Oh, that's it. That was our road mask all along. We can copy this one. We can go to masks. We paint this as our new road mask. Instead of generating it this way, when you use objects there, you can actually raycast them with the same procedural tools. I'll show it in a minute. But for now, we have our road mask. Same deal as usual. We can go to masks. We can import our road mask. And we go to masks, road mask. That's it. Apply. Now we have our road mask. Then we can go to our generate masks from earlier. And for our forest mask, we already had a custom copy of forest, I think. No, we don't. Okay, let's create one. We'll start from our forest mask and we'll remove our road mask. We don't have the road mask yet, so let's add it. This is the generated forest layer. We're going to remove the road mask, we're going to clamp it so the values can't go out of bounds. We'll generate it as the layer called forest. Save. And then we have our forest with our roads cut out. To generate it, we need to enable this step. Not all parameters are set because it now wants a road mask. We can add our road mask. We don't need this one anymore, but we are going to run this one. Let's save to be sure. Takes a while. It was a good thing to save. Okay, and when we have generated our masks, we should now see a generated forest that has our forest area with our roads cut out. Same deal as usual, we need to re-import our mask, because now we have a generated forest mask. If we had did this one, our other logic will break. So we're not going to update that one, we're just going to add the generated forest as a new one. We'll prefix it with generated to make it clear we're using the updated version. Once we add it, we can click apply. We go to rules, and everything that uses our forest mask can now swap to the generated mask if we don't want to fill in the roads. Forest borders will still have a problem. They don't account for the new forest mask yet. So maybe let's do this first. And the borders, instead of generating them of our normal forest mask, let's generate them from our newly generated forest mask. And so it will also have the cutouts in them. Okay, let's save this. We were updating rules. The borders remain the same. We have grass and meadow. I'm going to skip that. Oh no, it's just a texture. Let's do it. We have this clear foliage. We have a texture for the fields. Yeah, sure. We don't need to clear all or to generate dirt paths. What we are missing actually is we are not generating our roads yet, so let's add that. We'll add a texture for our roads, and we'll choose our road mask, and we'll fill them in with asphalt for now, but maybe we have some cracks, and let's distribute them all over there. This script is also a scattering mask, and I need to reselect my terrain. Okay, perfect. We're going to generate the forest steps. We didn't update them, so they didn't become active. Okay, that's about it, I guess. Let's run our place objects. Okay, and we're finished. Now we can go have a look. You can see our forest path is generated, but it has foliage on the roads, so we know what to do with that. We can say clear foliage for our roads. We do clear foliage in mask. We add our road mask, and it will remove all the foliage from our dirt paths. Also from the border, so that should be fine. Now we have roads, so we can do the same thing over and over again. We can add a border to the road, we can remove the foliage, we can add a grass going into the road border, and so on until we paint our complete map. So I guess that's about it. Yeah, contact me if you have anything more questions. This is what I can come up with while investigating the procedural placement tools. I think this scrapes most of it, what it can do. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Discord, I guess.